A woman who throws her baby in the garbage, a thief who falls into his own trap, or a woman who spits on an employee. Many times we don't know we are being filmed, and sometimes we do something stupid. That's what happened to the people you're about to see today. Sit back and relax. Here are some people who didn't know they were being filmed and who did anything. In this footage, a man was sitting on the benches of a bank branch, patiently waiting his turn to check out, when suddenly the phone in his pocket exploded. Sparks flew out of his pocket while he jumped around in panic. Everyone who was present at the time was shocked by what was happening. The man managed to save himself by having the good reflex to remove his shorts. Luckily, he was wearing a slip. Despite the fact that he miraculously escaped, the panic he felt at the time of the explosion almost gave him a heart attack. He should count himself lucky and now think about going to buy shorts and a phone in a hurry. And while he's at the bank, he might as well withdraw some money. The man has to face the looks of the people who will see him coming out of the bank without the pants and will not understand what must have happened to him. And yes, that's the bank. They rob you to the last cent until you drop your pants. At the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport in the United States, a 9-year-old boy with autism was accompanied by a group of 20 people. He was about to travel with them, but when he arrived at the check-in, while everyone was busy checking their bags and tickets, the child, who was very curious to know where the checked bags were going, decided to have a look and got caught in the conveyor belt. The child disappeared, which did not escape the attention of the people he was supposed to travel with. Everyone started to look for him for a long time. Fortunately, the police managed to find him 5 minutes later. Considering his mental health, the child must have been scared to death, but this accident will teach him to never put his nose where it doesn't belong. In Poso, Alegre, Brazil, a young man was standing at the bottom of a friend's house. He rang the doorbell of his friend to invite him to a soccer game, but when his friend didn't answer, the boy, let's say, pushed the doorbell a little too hard, which woke the family dog. Upset that he was woken up, the dog got frustrated and decided to get even with the boy. He got out and ran straight to the victim, who was waiting quietly at the bottom of the door. Seeing the angry dog running towards him, the young boy had no choice but to clumsily climb on the trash can that was at his feet to gain height and avoid being bitten. But he twisted it. A hilarious scene that was published on social networks and caused a wave of laughter and comments. The boy was even nicknamed the Garbage Boy, not a very prestigious nickname. Finally, the owner of the dog came to his rescue and freed the boy. The boy, who only wanted to play soccer with his friend, soon regretted going out that day. In these images, a woman was standing on the platform of the Rogier station in Brussels, waiting for the next metro to arrive. As she was slowly moving forward to be among the first to enter the car, the woman was brutally pushed from behind by a young man. The victim was immediately thrown onto the tracks while the subway was approaching. The images are clear. The man waited until he saw the subway coming before running towards the victim and deliberately pushing her onto the tracks. Immediately, people who witnessed the scene started screaming to alert the driver, who managed in extremis to brake and avoid going over the woman. People rushed to try to get her out, while the individual took off running through the subway corridors. Thanks to the recorded images, the authorities were able to arrest the suspect only minutes after he disappeared. He was in the metro station De Brokery. The man was handed over to the police before being placed at the disposal of the Brussels Public Prosecutor Office. A priori, he has no connection with the victim, who seems to have been chosen randomly. He was also subjected to a psychiatric examination in order to evaluate his mental health. Nevertheless, no one understands the motive of this attempted murder. The woman, who was almost killed by a few fractions of a second, will certainly have difficulty recovering. Fortunately, she was quickly taken care of once she was back on the platform. The paramedics were called and the victim, still in shock, was transported to the hospital. From now on, the woman will certainly not take the subway of her life. In January 2022 in New Mexico, a young woman arrived at a dumpster late at night. Appearing very stressed, she gets out of her car to awkwardly throw a trash bag and gets back in her car to drive away. Later, bystanders heard screams and infant cries coming from the dumpster. They opened the bag and discovered a newborn baby wrapped in a dirty, wet towel, still with its umbilical cord. The baby was immediately transported to the hospital after authorities were alerted and sent a medical team to the scene. The infant suffered a lot, but fortunately he could be saved at the last minute. As for the mother, she was found by the police thanks to her license plate. The 18-year-old woman declared that she had made a denial of pregnancy and that she did not know what she was doing. She was arrested and charged with attempted murder and child abuse. She faces up to 15 years in prison. She's not likely to be a mother again anytime soon. In a shopping mall in Saudi Arabia, a jewelry salesman was in his store and was about to close because during the prayer, all the stores close. But as he was about to leave his store, an old man showed up with a suitcase in his hand and asked him to keep the suitcase for him while he went to pray. The salesman gladly accepted. He let the suitcase in, closed his store, and lowered the security curtain. But while the shopkeeper was at the mosque, the surveillance camera captured a surreal scene. A little boy got out of the suitcase and started to steal gold jewelry from the store. He put everything in his suitcase and broke in again. 20 minutes later, when the store reopened, the old man came to get his suitcase back. But fortunately, the salesman had the reflex to check what was inside. Following his instinct, the old man was then caught and arrested by the police. As for the salesman, he almost lost a lot of money while trying to help. The old man learned to be suspicious of everyone and to stop doing favors, even if it is to do a good deed. Get a taste of one's own medicine. In October 2021, in Cairo, a young boy was walking through the streets of the city when he crossed the path of Mahmoud Ragab, the journalist who works for the news website Yum7. Was broadcasting live on Facebook a report on the consequences of the earthquake that had just hit the country. The young man, who obviously came from a poor family, saw the phone the journalist was using and decided to steal it. The thief, who was on his motorcycle, passed by his victim and in a fraction of a second brutally snatched the phone and ran off with it. Except that, as he could not know that the journalist was live, the young man took the phone in one hand while driving with the other and did not think to lock it. As a result, the thousands of people who were watching the live broadcast were able to see his face, while he, with a cigarette in his mouth, was proud of his achievement. The funniest part of the scene is that at one point, the thief turned around to see if he was being chased, while at the same time, everyone was watching him. Great irony. The video has generated a lot of comments and has been seen several million times on the networks. It was even broadcast on the news. Unfortunately for our thief, the broadcasting of his head helped the authorities to get their hands on him quite easily. The man had meanwhile sold the phone to a shopkeeper, but did not have time to enjoy his loot, as he ended up in jail. In India, a man employed by a dairyman was milking one of the cows in the stable to sell the milk in the creamery. But work makes you hungry and thirsty, and when you work for a dairyman, you should never complain about thirst. So the man decided to help himself directly to the bucket of milk and drink it. After drinking the milk bucket greedily, the employee realized that he absolutely had to disguise his action so that his employer would not realize that the amount of milk was not what he was used to milking. The man then had the idea to fill the milk bucket with water. The problem is not the idea itself, which is already disgusting, but the fact that he used the water that was in the barrels and that was normally reserved for the cattle. As you can see, the water was dirty and soiled. But what the man didn't know in all this was that someone was filming the scene from above. Something tells me he must be out of a job by now. Anyway, it serves him right. All he had to do was not take the milk and the milk money. In this sequence, a woman was sitting in the bleachers of an assembly of deputies in Quebec, while the Minister of Justice, Stephanie Vallet, was making a speech very serious in front of the camera. Suddenly, the woman had an urge to scratch her nose, an urge that grew and quickly turned into an urge need to pick her nose. The woman then started to pick her nose without restraint and without discretion. Worse still, she immediately put her fingers in her mouth to swallow what she was removing from her nostrils. Ugh. A very embarrassing moment for the spectators who were watching the scene with amazement and were not paying attention to what the minister was saying. The woman had managed to divert all attention to herself, thinking that no one saw her. In a matter of seconds, she had the embarrassment of her life. It would not be surprising if she resigned right after the speech. In the shopping center in Bexleyheath, England, a young woman was hanging out with a group of young people. They were very noisy and behaved inappropriately, to the point of being very annoying to people. At one point, when she wanted to enter a fast food restaurant to eat, the young woman and the other people in her group were refused access because of their attitude. For many minutes, the woman attacked the security guard who had forbidden her to enter the restaurant, yelled at him, pointed at him inappropriately, and even tried to force her way in. But seeing that the doorman was quite tough and specially well camped on his position, the woman, who was in all its states and who had not supported that she was treated in this way, decided to take revenge on him by spitting on his face, an abominable act that has earned her to be actively sought by the police, who have launched an identification call to find her. The woman finally left the scene, out of her mind. All she will have gained by doing this is a fine or maybe more, a few months in jail for his gesture that could be interpreted as very racist. So, what do you think of this hilarious footage? Give us your opinion in the comments. And if you liked this video, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell to receive all the notifications and not miss anything from our upcoming content.